So hello, um, hope you find yourself well. And I would like firstly to thank Carmen Mena that invited Faith and me to this kitchen talk. I think it's the 8th. And yes, we'll be here for 1 hour to talk to you about many subjects that are concerning us in the moment. So I give the word to Faith.
Also, just to give a big thank you to Carmen and Plan B for making this dialogue happen. Super nice to be reunited with Pia. We worked together in Helsinki for the preparation of the dance house. So it's nice to come back and be able to connect again. Yeah, and talk about what matters to us now. Yeah.
Yeah, Faith, you already mentioned our collaboration, but still, for the people that don't know, would you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Pia. So I'm Faith. I have been working in arts and dance programming for about 17 years now, mainly in Singapore at the National Arts Centre called Esplanade, where I had the programming of dance and also the development of new projects under dance, new commissions, as well as an artist residency, which is multidisciplinary. And for 1 year, I was also in Helsinki as the head of program development. And we were there before the house was open to plan the programs and directions for the house itself. And also we worked together on a very special project called Sparks, where we selected Finnish artists to be commissioned for the new spaces in the house. Yeah. So Pia, would you like to share a bit about yourself too?
Yeah, thank you, Faith. Yeah, I'm Pia Krämer. I'm from Germany but live in Portugal. I worked for many years, almost 18, in a residency center in a monastery in a small town south of Lisbon, Montemor Novo. And there I was in different kind of functions. Firstly, I worked for the community projects. And then later I did the programming of the residencies and the international projects. So we also hold a Portuguese platform for performing arts every 2 years. And there I stopped working in 2019. In the meantime, I was president of the European Dance House Network for 2 years. And after, I went also as a senior advisor to work with Faith and Miki Aaltonen in the program team, where we recently finished the Sparks project together. In the moment, I'm working on documentary film for dance, contemporary dance, and also in a project for the Portuguese dance as a transition project for classical dancers, but then in the long term also for the performing arts in support programs. So that's what I'm doing now as a freelancer in the moment. Yeah, so Faith and I, we talked this morning and we felt like we wanted firstly to express our solidarity and our deep connectedness to the Ukrainian artists and the Ukrainian people. And there we found an artist and programmer, Anton Ovchinnikov. He is the director of a festival in a city called Selyonka Festival, and he wrote in a Facebook post that I wanted to read you about his situation in a poetic way. So I would like to share this with you. So he said, "She can't wait any longer, sitting quietly on the couch to get up, to lie down, swearing, grab a book in your hands and quit. Trying to read something, water the flowers, climb into bed, just to calm down and wait. Nope, no, she said, she can't wait. Scroll through the Telegram pages, call, taking care of mom, and to think that I'm alone again in apartments for rent abroad. Where are the people, all strangers to you, such a good one, such Bring on the vodka and go off. I go. She's going to the bottom. And songs are all about depth, about the sea, and about the ocean. She not here, but not there either. She don't want to wait any longer on sunrise, on sunset, change the records at random, like an endless masquerade. She needs a strong shoulder and more like nothing else. She doesn't want to wait any longer, smoke, hurry up, a little to drink, to talk to myself, to make a friend laugh in the chat. She just wants to live, just holding his hand and simple to like each other. Hugging with a plush fox sleep and to see a dream again about the sea, the waves and the hit as if there was no war. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been such a challenging time now to see what's going on. And also in Asia, there are many challenges happening politically and unrest in Hong Kong as well as in Myanmar. So just to express that acknowledgement of the difficult times that people are trying to overcome at this moment. Yeah. Mm.
I was checking on this morning. I think there are 7 really civil wars going on in the world. And of course, the Ukrainian war is in Europe, which was since many, many years now a peaceful place. And so, yeah, we thought also, the impact of the last 2 years. How was this? Because it's really one big event after the other where we had to react. And that is my first question I would have to you, Faith, about how did this impact you in a professional way? First the pandemic, and how all this made you shift around, and what were your reactions? How did that work for you?
Yeah. It's like everyone else, it's been a big challenge. I'm just now recovering from COVID. So if you hear my voice, it's a bit strange, or I'm coughing, it's because of that. Specifically in Singapore, the country took quite a highly regulated approach to managing the pandemic. So movements were very controlled and the border was closed like many places. And in that way, because of the high regulation, it left the healthcare system in a better place than in some other countries. And in that way, those challenges have been well managed. But with the high regulation, it was physically and mentally very isolating, I think, for everyone to adjust to. And also there was a very strong sense of surveillance, because it just amplified, I think, what was also already existing in the culture of the governance and the country. So with this kind of isolation, it's very difficult for a country that is so small like us. And in Asia, where there's no system of free flow of travel, it becomes very challenging, more so for the arts during this time. So a lot of questions arose during this period to me, in tandem with conversations that were happening elsewhere globally in the arts, questions about sustainability, and naturally this idea of more support and focus for local artists that came into the thinking of programming. And fortunately, because there were really good grants that we could tap into for the arts, and the support was still continuing in spite of the closures, in spite of the pandemic, it meant that some things could still be very much possible. But I think these big questions, it was very clear to me that they needed to be understood in a very specific way, with what sustainability means for each context and each different country. And we needed to find our own definition of that within Asia. Because, for example, with travel mobility being so different in this region than say in Central Europe, that really means that we are really reliant on the flow of people and ideas to keep continuing. Otherwise, certain important things cannot happen. For example, artists who are working under certain conditions where they're not able to present their work in a place that has economical or social political constraints, they rely very much on being able to have that mobility. Also in certain regions here, there is much more infrastructure and support for the arts than in other regions. So for us in Singapore in particular, I think that there is tendencies where mainstream ways of thinking tend to dominate locally. So it's really important that we are able to keep the conversations open and flowing and engaging from the outside, and to always be in dialogue with new ways of thinking that exist outside and within Singapore as well. So maybe I can just share that during this time, within the programming that we were able to do together at the art center I work with and for, we had to adjust an international dance festival very quickly into something where travel wasn't possible. So given the sensitivities of the time, we really wanted to question what was important now with dance and how it relates back to the body, and that we were all stuck in this sense of not being able to move and reconsider what movement means for all of us. So we were recalibrating these possibilities of dance and how we can find new connections. And we thought first about the group that was most impacted in Singapore from the pandemic, who had the strictest regulation of movement, were actually the very large proportion of migrant workers who work here in the service industries, in construction, in domestic home situations. So they were very much stuck, not being able to visit their families for 2 years, and they have children and extended families there. So they were also confined, because many of them live in dormitory situations, to not having the ability to go outside or beyond the compound. So we decided to do a project where we worked with mainly domestic workers who were working in homes to assist families. And we brought in 2 Singaporean artists who spent a few months with them to uncover what their sentiments were in this period, their challenges, and translate that into something performative that they could then share with the wider community as well. So that's a new kind of project that the festival has never been able to engage with, that was motivated by the social situation of the pandemic in Singapore. And we don't have many dance artists in Singapore who are yet so used to working with non-dancers, non-professionals. So that was also a really important experience for the artists who were engaging in that project. And then also there was, like everywhere else, a big change towards digital, because the physical was no longer possible of gathering. So for us as programmers, that was very hard to encounter, because we are completely wired for the live experience. And so when we looked into the digital, it was really important for us that there was a way that the projects were not just showing what is possible on stage anymore and just a recording of it, but really engaging with the relationship between the audience who is no longer physically in the space, in a new possibility of connection, and what the digital stage and digital space can allow for more more worlds than actually a physical world could be. So there were two projects that we supported to be realized during that time. And one was from a Filipino choreographer called Isa Jackson, who also works quite regularly in Europe. And the project she did was Manila Zoo. And she was looking at Filipino entertainers and how they are often placed in amusement parks, for example, in Disneyland, and they are not the lead characters because they don't fit the description of, say, Snow White, but they are the supporting cast. And also thinking of the idea of isolation and how in these amusement systems, you think about the idea of people or animals on display, like a zoo. So she used the Zoom format in a very clever way where the boxes became cages. And they were all performing from their homes in Manila in quite a restrictive lockdown situation, but still really being able to transmit the concept to the people who were watching. And this performance was actually meant to be watched live in a theatre studio together, but you could still feel very connected to the performers in the on the screen as well. And it was very much a commentary on what was happening with the pandemic as well as the social issues. And then the other project was something that took place across Asian presenters, and we also had one presenter from Italy as well, who joined us in a piece led by Chen Wukang from Taiwan, and he was speaking about the closure of all the theaters and how isolating that was to the performer. So in these empty theater spaces, we invited each country to curate and present solos. Dance artists from their own country presenting their own solos to an empty audience, and to change the idea of what traditional theatre means, what traditional cinematography means when your audience is really, the gaze is shifted into the digital space. So really these projects for us were about finding new experiences of dance that otherwise could not be, would not have been motivated except through this rather challenging situation of the pandemic. Yeah.
I find this very interesting, Faith, how somehow also as a besides the whole resilience exercise that we all had to do, that the programmers also had to learn to program digitally. Yeah, because not all the projects, of course, are make sense on a digital to see it in a digital, but some are totally. Yeah, and even and have a positive effect on and can be seen in different kind of angles. And this is something I really also in some moments I discovered during this period, that there's a new way of programming, you know, that how to look at the performance, that you already look in a dual way, you know, you don't look maybe in the future in one dimension, you look at it if it can be shown digitally and differently also in a theater space. And the other dimension that I found it very interesting is that you can connect still, you can more do of documentary. Yeah, you have the chance to document more, so that you can bring background information through the digital, you can make more interviews, you can connect it. So there is another world to explore, of course, you know, to somehow compensate the missing physical experience, which is missing.
Yeah. How was the impact for you in the last 2 years professionally?
I mean, I have to say, I just stopped in 19, and in March 20 there was a lockdown. So somehow I couldn't feel that impact on my former structure, but which was, as I know, was a big impact, because to organize residency during a pandemic was quite a challenge for the team. Yeah. So in the time during the pandemic, I was in a very comfortable situation because I was just organizing. I was doing the interims management for the network where we work already and had before already worked in offices in different countries in Europe. So the office was between Amsterdam, Brussels, and then later even Ljubljana and Barcelona, and me in my parents' place. So I had to really embrace the whole world of a digital office during several times, during 1.5 years. Another good experience that for me was the documentary filming, and to explore really the power of film for live performance. Because I dive into a world I was not yet before in such a complex way. Because when I worked with a producer that is called Accentus Music in Leipzig, and they are used to film documentary concerts, classical ballet, and in a very complex way. But with the filming the contemporary dance performances, which were duos and 2 solos and the trio, it was another challenge for them. And so we ended up by filming just parts of the performance with, I think, all in all 6 different cameras. So this was to get the feeling of life and closeness and distance and different kind of textures of the performance, and to somehow compensate the non-physical presence. It takes a lot of technical skill to be able to capture that. So there was, for example, there was a crane, that was hovering. There was a small drone. There was a Steadicam that was just very much close to the bodies. And there were 2 different kind of other cameras placed on the corners of the room. So, and there was still one photographer that kind of made small videos of different kind of details, where he brought sometimes reactions of the camera team, kind of catching around the documentary all the other collaborators that were working and their reactions. So this is huge. I mean, to make it, and then it's not yet, it was not yet broadcasted, it will come in RTTV, but it was so interesting experience for me to, when we're sitting in the theater space and watching a performance, how much we activate in us if we really attentively and watch with our whole system of sensorial capacity. Our eyes, our ears, our nose, our body temperature, our posture, the way of attention. Sorry I'm in Portugal, so much sun here. I just close quickly. So, I mean, this is impressive to what it costs technologically to adapt performance to film. And of course, it's another kind of experience, but if it's well filmed and well done, it's really something I would like to look more in the future.
Yeah, it's such a new space for us to tackle in so many ways, and explore. And there's so many possibilities in terms of the medium itself and what it can do that extend beyond what we were accustomed to in the physical space. But when it starts to go into the digital formats, it also comes with many questions that haven't really been addressed in terms of like the the fact that right now there's also a very strong, at least in Singapore and in Asia, culture where the digital is also forming audience or perception or consumption habits that are very linked to commercial ways of appreciating work. So it's very bite-sized, it's very instant. And this was happening, of course, pre-pandemic already. And then once everybody started to isolate, it became even more that your world was only through your screen. And it has become an extension of how you live in every aspect of your life for some people. So this challenge between the expectation of the audience and how we can then address that and be conscious of it and yet subvert it to be what the artist wants, the way that the audience should be looking or should experience something in a different way compared to everything else that is this overwhelm of image and visual and information and stimulation constantly through the screen that the audiences are so accustomed to. It feels like they have to come into a very different way when they're looking at art through this lens, this new lens. Yeah.
I have to say that for me, this attention exercise, because somehow a live performance, if it is not so full of stimulus, it's more reduced, more minimalist. And an attention exercise for me is really meditation. When you are in a very empty space into your brain, and there's try to really disconnect yourself from all the outside impact, and try to go into an emptiness. And that I have to say, since I practice the meditation, it's now like 4 years really regularly, I feel myself much more attentive in the moment. Even I could feel like a much more magnetic connection to when I watch a live performance. My whole system is more clean somehow, and the system is more able to connect with all my senses, and that I think the practice of meditation is really a great means to cut with all the noise of our times. That I wish there is coming a big movement. I feel it in everywhere through the yoga movement, and then that the meditation, even in the manager's department, meditation is getting a really modern skill and tool to come back to some simplicity, and to take out all the complexity of the thinking, the speed and the thinking and the images and all that what you are exposed to during one day only. There was another question in this context with the programming and the digital. Do you think now, since we all made ourselves so comfortable in our living rooms, I mean, I don't have a big screen, but many people got big screens and turned their living rooms into theaters and cinemas. You would think it's getting difficult to get people back into the theater, or you think people are hungry for live performance?
I think it's a mix. Even before the pandemic happened, I with this more ways to entertain yourself or engage yourself with the screen, we already see some kind of shift in how people want to spend their time. So it did feel there was more effort to try to bring people into the theatre. especially if it's for work that is challenging or not, again, coming from this very instant gratification kind of place, big spectacle. That was already a challenge. And I think it'll still continue to be in Singapore as well, because we still have to justify the value and role of the arts, I feel. We're still in that place where it is not yet accepted in the mainstream that this is something that is really integral to nourish yourself. So a large percentage of people still see it as a way to relax and be entertained and a form of expression, but to be challenged or to rethink what you already know, that's a smaller percentage of audiences. So this, but then yet that is one of the most powerful aspects of the arts and so necessary now. And I feel particularly with dance, it has such a strong power to connect from the body, from relations, from its ability to experience sense of time very immediately. So I continue to, I think, advocate and work from that place of that value. And I think it's about unlocking some understanding of why that's important within the audiences that have not yet connected to that. Because that experience, like meditation, like things that otherwise would feel difficult at first, can be thoroughly rewarding and in a very deep affecting way. Yeah. But in this way for you, I think we all experienced a sense of prioritizing things, and everything came into a more sharper focus of what was important to us during the 2 years, because be it family or friends or our health and things like that, and then within work as well. So what for you is closest to your heart in the work that you've been doing?
I mean, it came more and more essential to me that the word practice, the practice of dance and the way we put all our working styles and working together and being together, then in a certain kind of translate this in a practice. And this transition from the thinking, the research, because I was lucky and I could do a lot of research and dive into new literature that I normally don't have time to read. One that has got very close to my heart, and I have it here. It's the book from Holding Change from Adrienne Maree Brown. I was talking to you shortly, this Emergent Strategies, all this new thinking that I think that is coming very strongly. Also her edition before was called Pleasure Activism, which is a practice, how to really bring the pleasure back into the work, from the beginning, make a set of values that you believe are important in the future, and go along with that set of values. It comes from the Black Lives Matter activist movement, that they, during this period of activism, they derived a lot of knowledge and values, how they want to work together in the future. And I have to say, this is very, very inspiring. Also for, I can see that many choreographers already integrate this way of working in their practice. And I think it's now on the also organizers and programmers and directors to learn from the dance field and introduce the way they practice into the working field of direction and all the other jobs. And that is actually what I think is the key here, is that we learn from this practice and communicate it also to our public, you know, how actually is that coming into being, you know, some idea, some abstract idea, and what is all the background and the research, and how does this then flourish into one moment of life experience. And this making is for me still the key and the fascinating thing. And then always, because I come from psychology, of course, I always, in the end, interests me very much, why did that person do this like that? Yeah. And then slowly, in a very yeah, I feel I would be like a almost like a detective, criminal detective, who did the crime, and how, you know, deeply understand beyond my own understanding, then again deeply understand another person's mind and history and biography. And this, you know, I found this fascinating still, you know. And to I mean, anyway, if you are interested in an artist, let it be a writer or a painter or a musician, or, you know, if you're really fascinated by it, you really go deeply into its biography. You want to get to know this person. I find this doesn't happen so much in dance. Dance is still, you know, this kind of a bit like, oh, wow, this physical happening there. But then there's a not this easy access to, only if it's, you know, if it's big names, you Pina Bausch, and you want to know more. Or so. But in a smaller scale, like it is in music, maybe, you know, it's easy to access this kind of information that you would like to have.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think what also is very important to me is I feel the transmission of knowledge of the process that has taken place throughout and before, and that whole labor towards what maybe the moment that the audience sees that. I think that we have to find, like, from a programmer's point of view, strategies to be able to bring that into as important as the work itself. Because otherwise, again, it just feeds into, we come, we watch the show, and we have that moment only with it. And maybe for the moment we're into the it can also, again, very fleeting and instant. And I think more and much labor is involved in that moment, and it would be more rich for the audience to be able to be like us, so connecting where this has come from. And in Iran, such a place of integrating so many different lines in a contemporary dance, that how do we explain that, but also honor that the experience. It's not something that we need to educate, you know, to be like a pedagogue, or to be very didactic, but how do we, the big question is, how do we find that balance between the knowledge that resides with all of us as professionals, that can be gifted to the audience who is interested and wants to listen, because that process is actually very, very enticing. I think anybody who has watched a rehearsal and then come for the show has a completely different experience, and then feels much more included to see what it's like when the performers are are negotiating different things and not it's just what it's supposed to be. So to be in the mind of the choreographer, to be in the understanding of the system, of the practice, of the choices, I really want to find these new strategies for a kind of audience appreciation programming that is a kind of companion or as important and central to what we normally see as the main program as well. Yeah, those conversations and dialogues, I think, need more and more to be accessible. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole atmosphere of it, It's interesting. I saw a TED talk with Dana Kaspersen, which is an ex-dancer from William Forsythe. And she's now in this kind of TED talks. She's a kind of a coach, life coach. Yeah. And she says she always wants to bring the knowledge of a dancer into the working field of and the living and the life and into life, normal life. And then she says, and for that to happen, and for her to be at ease with this transmission of this knowledge, once in a while she needs to go into a rehearsal studio and see dancers at work. Yeah, because there she kind of grabs the energy that is so complex. Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
And this is really true, Faith, when you say, how to transmit this complexity. Yeah, this worldviews, and that the choreographer, all these places she has to go before this comes into being. Yeah. This is this is a whole universe. Yeah. And
yes,
to closer to that needs a lot of documentary, a lot of much more action.
Yeah, and also maybe less is more, because if you still have the festival format of a whole range of different things, I mean, of course, that's also very exciting, but then it means that really you just have so many different things, and you can't really go as resources and as programmers to be able to offer something deeper that unpacks what that actually is on one focal point, because often it's so many different things to engage with. So I don't know if we need to necessarily still have this kind of volume as we did before the pandemic, where it's a festival of 100 things.
Yeah.
I don't know if we still need to be like this in presenting anymore. Yeah.
That's true. This kind of running, this kind of consuming in it. Yeah, it's totally true. I mean, it is interesting that even very much, because I was working now for 2 events as a curator, where there is a budget and you have this 3 or 4 days, and you have proposals that you should choose, and then in the end it volume, it ends up being almost always too much. It's so hard to be there consequent and say, less is more, let's do, let's concentrate on this, or no, it has to be everything. And that's an exercise that the programmers have to do in the future, to go more to...
it's difficult because we want everything to be represented. We want to be fair. We want everyone to have the opportunity to be able to show, right? And you don't have all the time like unlimited platforms. So sometimes if you have one platform, you want to give everybody the chance to be able to do that. But it's a real recalibration now, and balance between what was before and what now is to come, I think. I do think that a different sense of time is important, away from what is being prescribed from a very capitalist kind of system as well. I mean, particularly in this kind of context like Singapore, where it's always rushing into the future. But in that rush, it compromises a lot of the very human needs that we have. And for me, ways of working and conditions of working have been really important to think about also with the pandemic. Before, we were working like not so much at home in Asia. It was very based in an organization. That was the style. So when I went to Helsinki, that was very refreshing that there was that option to do that. And I think because of the pandemic and being forced to work from home, this is now also coming into, it's actually possible. You can have a life outside of the office and still be able to contribute and get work done. So I think it's really important that we think for people working in the arts, because often the conversations are quite centered on artist conditions, conditions for them to be able to maintain, obviously, because it's more precarious for them in terms of funding, especially for independent artists. But also, I think we don't have a lot of conversations about the arts workers. For us as the programmers who are moving from digital production to stage to constantly having to shift, and way after the rehearsal or the show, we're still alive and awake, trying to resolve so many problems, being the one to mediate between funding, between audience, between artists. I think it'd be nice if we can have more conversations about how we take care of ourselves so that we can keep going through this, so that there's solidarity in for us as the people that are trying to keep supporting the work. Yeah,
and again here, international exchange. Again, it's if you can see it in a wider platform, how programming functions. You could also then see, okay, let's look at what is performed in the whole region, and not just in competing, with this shows that, or that shows this, who is more advanced, and also organically trying to see this as a whole international collaboration. That there we are quite far from it. There's some I think through some artist support networks, there is this collaboration, but again, it's more about the artist support that they can tour, and maybe not so much taking in consideration the programming of each space and how that can benefit from a closer collaboration. I mean the co-productions, of course, and all but still thinking about sustainability, there's still a lot of work to do.
Yes. And I think one wish, speaking about touring and networks, is that for a long time, the invitations, I think, to dance have been quite disproportionate on one side. So from Asia, because of the early developments in funding in specific, say, European or American cities, that they have been having a long tradition of producing dance and a long history of development of artistic practice and artists in contemporary work. And in Asia, it's been a very different path of development. And in terms of formal resourcing and support, it is more seen now that certain specific countries or cities have more investment into that. But the platforms for dance in Asia still, some of them still have seen more of European or American companies than we have seen Asian companies in Europe. And I do wish for this change, that there be an acknowledgement of some reciprocal ways of thinking about this. Of course, sometimes it has to do a lot with the platform and the context, but in certain cities in Europe, it has been very much at the center of dance production making. And I think there has to be a acknowledgement that dance exists in so many practices outside of that. And I think there has to be an acknowledgement that it's very different from what exists within Europe, and that's okay. And that audiences have to somehow make that shift, that the way that they watch a contemporary work in Europe cannot be the same as the way that they watch a contemporary work in Asia. And sometimes those habits are difficult. And of course, it needs to be a dialogue and a conversation, which is why it's really nice that there are some dialogues that exist now with Encounters, with EDN and the Asian Dance Network that I'm part of as well, where first we need to just exchange and speak about these things, because I think there has to be a shift in what is the idea of what is contemporary dance, because it's been so dominated and defined by quite a Eurocentric way of thinking, and naturally so. But I guess my worry is that with the pandemic and also political shifts and funding, the view of a kind of more narrow towards inside is very strong, maybe, and it's almost like taking steps backwards. And I worry because that flow between Asia and the rest of the world is also, for me, not everyone will feel the same way, but for me, really, really important to keep that circulation, because it just keeps us really being able to be open, to exchange the ideas and the ways and the strategies to cope, I feel, because we're all going through intense periods of different kinds of crisis. So more than ever, actually, we need to keep those strategies flowing together. But I am concerned the mandate and the thinking becomes only what is in your own, which is local, which is equally important. But how do we acknowledgement that I think there's so what dance definition, and this is support dance right now. A lot of a center and a periphery of ways of looking, aesthetics, and so forth. So I think this is also another area for us to look at.
Totally agree with you. And the tissue, because this is kind of like knitting a tissue, between the cultures to deeply understand other ways of art making. Really deeply understand, not just like superficially. And as this tissue is getting better knitted through international exchange programs and dialogue ongoing, and really going deeper into the subject and just touch and go, that is to come somehow to the beginning of our talk, that is the empathic tissue. And for empathic tissue, the dance is the master of empathy building, because it's how, as a baby, you structure your first empathy representation in you. It's through watching movement, and to remind us that we are at a very big source of empathy together. When we are in the dance, and that has nothing to do with styles and developments. It has to do with the pure authentic feeling of being somehow. And
Yeah.
that we shouldn't forget. Yeah.
Yeah. And also like it in practice as well with for example, we would not have had the chance to have ever met if not for the opportunity that was very exciting and unique in circumstances in us coming together in Finland for
Yeah.
something that was very new and different. Yeah, so I also think it's in the exchange of programmers and curators and researchers, as because not just for the artists to have these possibilities, but also for the whole community, I think, to have access to exchange. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe it's nice to now perhaps to have a wish for a change to come in in the dance scene right now. What would you, Pia, wish for a change in?
I would wish, yes, exactly what we were talking about, actually, this more consciousness about this need of dialogue in different kind of the professions connected to the dance. I really feel that it is missing a stronger dialogue. We talk a lot about artist development and but not so much about the whole, the whole universe of around. Yeah, I think that would be my more profound, not profound, more practical wish. Yeah. But then a more ideological wish is really to maintain the openness that the dance has inherent.
Yeah, absolutely inherent.
To transmit
Yeah.
this, because it was interesting. I just saw a post from, I don't know whom, from a company, a Russian dance company, which is composed by almost half of the dancers are Ukrainian. Yeah. And from Belarus, and they are all together there in this company. The whole conflict parties are dancing together in the dance company in Russia. And I mean, that is a power of it. Yeah, that people are collaborating beyond their ideologies.
Yeah.
You,
I
Faith?
think, yeah, I think dance is it's a very fragile space, but it's also one of the most powerful, you know?
Yeah.
So it's and contemporary practice, it somehow needs a lot of care, a lot of devotion, which I think we have dedicated our careers to. But I often find it very fragile because it's complex.
Yeah.
And in that way, I think we need to find strategies for us to be able to be very sensitive to this, and also the relation to what is happening in the wider social political situation with the world right now. And I think we really said it with this idea of a new kind of consciousness towards the practice as well. So I do wish for more more ways that we can coexist and appreciate the very different realities that are happening in each of our different contexts, and still be connected to those to those realities. Because even within one space, there are layers of those realities pushing and pulling constantly, and it's always in some ways a negotiation, and sometimes under great pressure as well, but so ever so fragile, as we've seen with the pandemic, where I mean, the body is such a fragile space, you know, and yet also so strong and so powerful to overcome as well. So I think in that way, dance has many powers to connect to people, and should be seen in a very, it should be regarded with a lot more care,
Yeah.
because of that. Yeah. So I do wish for this in yes,
Yeah.
as a bigger kind of hope. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a very
Yeah.
good perspective.
So yeah, thank you, Pia, for this lovely dialogue that we've been able to have, and thank you, Carmen, and the team at Plan B, for making this lovely kitchen talk possible. Yeah.
I'm on that. Thank you very much, Carmen, and also Fabian for the technical support. And thank you, Faith. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, and thank you for everybody to listening to us for a while. Okay, see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye,
Ciao, bye.
Pia.
Bye. Ciao,
Bye.
Faith. Bye.